My F21 husband M25 told me he isn't attracted to me after having his kids. Okay, this is going to be a long post, but honestly I'm so lost. I'm using this as my personal journal and a form of therapy since I can't afford that right now. We only dated 6 months but we knew each other for a long time before we dated 5 years. I'm going to try to make this as simple and not confusing as possible. We started talking October 2020, we had long phone calls, texted day and night, talked about how we wanted each other etc. etc. I came home from college tech 2020 and we finally hung out the 20th. We had a good time and were finally together physically for the first time. He continued on the next couple of weeks telling me he's falling in love with me. We went official on Facebook early January 2021. We got engaged in late February 2021 and planned an October wedding. I know, please don't mention it. He moved out of state for work April 2021 and May 2021 got into a bad accident that left him unable to eat or use the restroom on his own. I quit my job and flew down to take care of him and we decided to have a quick wedding in June 2021 to make everything less complicated and I just moved in permanently with him. The day of our wedding I was sick with a pretty bad illness that lasted a few weeks and was very hard to function with, but I still offered him as much intercourse as he wanted. That day he had the audacity to text his ex back when she congratulated him on our marriage. Then the day after our wedding I found him watching porn in the bathroom. A deep addiction he had sworn to give up when we got engaged. Then 2 days after our wedding I hadn't found a job yet since I had been his caretaker and he was just going back to work. He told me I could use his iPad to search for jobs and when I opened it lots of texts loaded on since it hadn't been opened in a while. The texts were between him and his ex and other girls he'd been seeing at the same time while we were dating. He had asked his ex to get back together with him a week before we put our relationship on Facebook and after she said no he went and hooked up with a rando. Obviously being super sick with my illness and 2 days after our wedding I was both physically and mentally sick with this info. I confronted him about it and he told me that he didn't sleep with these people at the same time we were together. Newsflash, he did. Anyways, so months continued and our intercourse life was never great, which obviously confused me. Newsflash, it was the porn. I spent every night begging him for intercourse, getting new outfits. Trying to do something intercoursey new, ask him what his fantasies were. Every night he was tired or had a headache. Lol, the irony. September of 2021 I find out I'm pregnant. This was not on purpose. I started working and hid my pregnancy from my employers, which was easy because I didn't show until 7 months. Through the pregnancy he continued to deny me time and time again. The day of the delivery of our son he went home and watched porn. After my son came I was giving him blowjobs even a week or two after I gave birth because I would rather him get it from me than porn, because him choosing the porn over me had hurt me so bad. Yet he still watched it. There's so many lies he told in this time frame I can't even tell you all of them, but he was lying about finances, porn, work, whatever he could. I also found he had shared with his ex the names we planned out for our children, which I ended up not using because of that. I know, petty. Up until this point whenever I dragged out the truth from him or he used porn again, I was gracious and forgiving and kind and comforting. That was until I tried to get the truth about why we had a practically intercourseless marriage at 20 and 25. He told me that when my body changed and we constantly argued about him lying he became unattracted to me. This broke me like nothing has ever broke me before. I was physically ill, throwing up and shaking for days. It was connected to the trauma I had from my first and only other boyfriend who told me that he had a porn addiction, then told me I wasn't attractive to him anymore. I also had a male person in my life who was best friend with my first ex who told me to kill myself. I was ugly, fat, nobody would love me etc. up until I was almost 18. To be honest, that was the point I stopped having great reactions to him and started screaming a lot of crying uncontrollably because the thought of loving someone who fell out of love with me was the hardest thing I had ever faced. And I will admit I said some pretty mean things, told him he was a bad dad and a bad example to our son. I never said anything that wasn't true, but I did say things that didn't need to be said. Honestly, I'm just going to skip a bunch and tell you that we had this big heartfelt conversation in April of 2023 and he basically told me he had given up porn for good and was a new man. Also important note is one thing he admitted is that he's lustful towards women at work. But I can't remember when he told me that. I was so stupid and thought this time was different and asked if he wanted another baby. I fell pregnant just weeks later, but then the lies were found again. I spent most of that summer continuing to ask why he didn't want intercourse, however my advances stopped. I could no longer bring myself to keep asking this man for intercourse. That destroyed my confidence and told me there was a period he wasn't attracted to me. The practically intercourseless marriage continued, but I never denied when he rarely asked and he knew I would never deny him. Fast forward to January 2024, our perfect angel of a daughter is born. We are in what feels to me more like a friendship. Not much fighting, but 4 weeks postpartum I confront him asking why he never asks for intercourse. I told him I would give him one chance to tell me anything he needs to. The one important thing he tells me is that he lied about volunteering for a work trip. Fine, whatever, I can get over that. It's been 2 weeks since then and something doesn't sit right. We had decent intercourse 2 nights ago and he stayed aroused even after intercourse and asked for more, which I've never seen. But something still felt off. I asked him again and finally he admitted that his porn addiction is ongoing, and he had an emotional affair that only lasted a few days but still happened while we were dating. So, I guess I have a few questions? Do you guys think I could be part of the problem with reacting harshly for a period, and not initiating intercourse for almost a year? My sister finally knows, which I don't like talking to family about marriage problems but I don't have any friends. She told me that she knows my family would support me if I needed help and she thinks he's emotionally abusive. Would anyone agree this could be emotional abuse? Where do I even go from here? We live 20-hour car ride from family and I have nobody here. I have a career I can easily pick up and live on my own again, but embarrassment is really hard to get over about who I married. Sorry for my trauma dump, there's always his side of the story too, but I tried my best to highlight the flaws I've had too. Thank you all. TLDR F21 have marriage trouble with my M25 husband. We have been married almost 3 years now and I'm thinking it's time for a separation. He's both physically and emotionally cheated and has had a porn addiction he chooses over me. Jesus, just end things with this awful man and go to therapy.